वर्णनभेद श्रद्धा समृद्धान्वित पापतापनिकुन्तनौ तनुभृता गोविन्दगानामृतये आनन्दाम्बुधिवर्धनैकनिपुणा कैवल्यनिस्तारक वन्दे सनातन रघुजुग श्रीजीव गोपालक तक्तातुर्णमशेषमण्डलपति श्रेणिं सदा तुज्जव बुद्धादीन गणेशक करुणया कौपीनकान्ताश्रित गोपीवावरसामृतं बिलहरे कल्लोलमग्नो मोह वन्दे सनातन रघुजुग श्रीजीव गोपालक पूजत कोकिल अंश सारसगण कीर्णे मयूराकुले नानारत्न निबद्ध मूलविटप श्रीयुक्त वृंदावन राधा कृष्ण अहर्निशं प्रभजत जीवार्तज यमुदा वन्दे रूप सनातन रघुजुग श्रीजीव गोपालक पूर्वक नाम गाननतिभि कालवशानि कृत निद्रार विहार कादि विजित चैतन्त दीन जज राधा कृष्ण गुणस्मृत मधुरिमा नंदेन सम्मोह वन्दे रूप सनातन रघुजुग श्रीजीव गोपालक राधा कुंड तटे कालिंदितनया तीरे च वंशी वटे प्रेमोन्मादव शेष दशया ग्रस्तो प्रेमतो सदा गायन्तो च कदा गुणवरा भाव विभूतौ मुदा वन्दे रूप सनातन रघुजुग श्रीजीव हे राधे ब्रज देवी के चललिते हे नंद सुनकुत श्री गोवर्धन कल्प पाद पतले कालिंदी बन्ने कुत भूषान्त विति सर्वतौ ब्रजपुरे धैर्यमहाबीबलो वन्दे रूप सनातन सनातन रघुजुग श्री जीव गोपालक वंदे रूप सनातन रघुजुग श्री जीव गोपालक श्रील गोपाल भट्ट गोस्वामी तिरुभाव महोत्सव की
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So today is the disappearance celebration of Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami of the 6 Goswamis. We're reading today from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela chapter 10, sloka 105. Shri Gopala Bhatta Eka Shaka Sarvotham Rupa Sanatana Sange Jhara Premalapan Shri Gopala Bhatta Eka Shaka Sarvotham Rupa Sanatana Sange Jhara Premalapan Shri Gopala Bhatta Eka Shaka Sarvotham Rupa Sanatana Sange Jhara Premalapan Gopala Bhatta Eka Shaka Sarvotham Rupa Sanatana Sange Jhara Premalapan Mataji's. Shri Gopala Bhatta, Shri Gopala Bhatta, Eka, 1, Shaka, branch, Sarva Uttama, very exalted, Rupa, Rupa, Sanatana, Sanatan, Sange, company, Jhara, whose, Prema, love of Godhead, Alapana, discussion. Translation. Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami the 47th branch, was one of the great and exalted branches of the tree. He always engaged in discourses about love of Godhead in the company of Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. We can repeat together. Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, the 47th branch, was one of the great and exalted branches of the tree. He always engaged in discourses about love of Godhead in the company of Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. Purport. Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami was the son of Venkata Bhatta, a resident of Sri Rangam. Gopal Bhatta formerly belonged to the disciplic succession of the Ramanuja Sampradaya, but later became part of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. In the year 1433, Shakabda, AD 1511, when Lord Chaitanya was touring South India, he stayed for 4 months during the period of Chaturmasya at the house of Venkata Bhatta, who then got the opportunity to serve the Lord to his heart's content. Gopal Bhatta also got the opportunity to serve the Lord at this time. Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami was later initiated by his uncle, the great sannyasi Prabodhanandan Saraswati. Both the father and the mother of Gopal Bhatta Goswami were extremely fortunate, for they dedicated their entire lives to the service of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They allowed Gopal Bhatta Goswami to go to Vrindavan, and they gave up their lives thinking of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Lord Chaitanya was later informed that Gopal Bhatta Goswami had gone to Vrindavan and met Sri Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, he was very pleased, and he advised Sri Rupa and Sanatana to accept Gopal Bhatta Goswami as their younger brother and take care of him. Sri Sanatana Goswami, out of his great affection for Gopal Bhatta Goswami, compiled the Vaishnav Smriti named Hari Bhakti Vilas and published it under his name. Under the instruction of Srila Rupa and Sanatana, Gopal Bhatta Goswami installed one of the 7 principal deities of Vrindavan, the Radharaman deity. The Sevites, priests of the Radharaman temple, belonged to the Gaudiya Sampradaya. When Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami took permission from all the Vaishnavas before writing Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Gopal Bhatta Goswami also gave him his blessings, but he requested him not to mention his name in the book. Therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj has mentioned Gopal Bhatta Goswami only very cautiously in 1 or 2 passages of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Jiva Goswami has written in the beginning of his Tattva Sandarbha, a devotee from southern India who was born of a Brahmin family and was a very intimate friend of Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, has written a book that he has not compiled chronologically. Therefore I, a tiny living entity known as Jiva, am trying to assort the events of the book chronologically, consulting the direction of great personalities like Madhavacharya, Sridhar Swami, Ramanujacharya, and other senior Vaishnavas in the disciplic succession. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Sandarbha, there are similar statements by Srila Jiva Goswami. Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami compiled a book called Sat Kriya Sara Dipika, edited the Hari Bhakti Vilas, wrote a foreword to the Sad Sandarbha, and a commentary on the Krishna Karnamrita. and installed the Radharaman deity in Vrindavan. In the Gaura Ganadesh Deepika 184, it is mentioned that his previous name in the pastimes of Lord Krishna was Ananga Manjari. Sometimes he is also said to have been an incarnation of Guna Manjari. Srinivasacharya and Gopinath Pujari were two of his disciples. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantekam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Arigor Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he was born in a Brahmin family nearby the town of Sri Rangakshetra, where the Lord is worshipped as Narayan. And his family they were members of the Ramanuja Sampradaya. So he was brought up with the attitude of Lakshmi Narayan being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas in the month of Magh, he soon after proceeded to Jagannath Puri, where he stayed for some time, but now as a sannyasi, he wanted to travel and preach and spread the glories of the holy name. So he left in the month of Vaishak and he began his travels. He went first to southern India. He visited many holy places, and this is all described in the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Eventually he came to a very famous holy place, Sri Rangakshetram, and there the Lord is lying on Sheshanag as Vishnu, and thousands of devotees come for darshan there every day. It's in the district of Tanjore, and many Brahmin families are worshipping the Lord there in that city. So one of those Brahmin families, Venkata Bhatta, he had two brothers, and they would come to see the Lord for darshan every day. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived there and entered the temple, he immediately went into a state of ecstasy seeing the Supreme Lord. And as was his normal way of expressing his ecstatic love for the Lord, he began to chant the holy names and dance in ecstasy. Now this was not the usual procedure for taking darshan in South India, and the devotees who were there also taking darshan very much appreciated Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's expression of love for their Lord. Particularly Venkata Bhatta, who was there watching the Lord, he became very attracted to the Lord. And soon after, he invited the Lord to come to his home for bhiksha, for taking prasad. So just at that time, it was the month of Ashad. Just as a few days ago, we celebrated the Ashad Purnima of Guru Purnima. And then the next day begins this month of Sharad, which is the beginning of Chaturmas. And according to the Shastras, the holy persons who generally, as Parivrajakacharyas, they travel and preach to, particularly to enliven the Grihastas, to take up Krishna consciousness. During those 4 months, during those 4 months, they don't travel because you can see the rain comes a few times every day, and the roads fill up, there are landslides, and also diseases are very prominent at this time. So they pick a holy place to stay, and at that place they give discourses and they enliven the people in the holy place with their discourses. So Venkata Bhatta, after feeding the Lord, and the Lord was very happy with the hospitality, he explained to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that just now Chaturmas is starting, so we request you to stay in our home for these 4 months and enlighten us in Krishna Katha. So Mahaprabhu, he was there with his servant Krishna Das. He accepted the invitation and he stayed at the home of Venkata Bhatta. Every day he would bathe in the Kaveri river there and take darshan of Sri Rangadev. So Venkata Bhatta, he had 2 brothers, Tirumala Bhatta and Prabhuda Bhatta. Prabhuda Bhatta was very learned. He later became Prabodhanandan Saraswati, a very great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who wrote many books. And he also was the teacher and the guru of Venkata Bhatta's son, Gopal. So Gopal at that time, you see, Gopal Bhatta in his humility, he would not allow anyone to write anything about him. Lokanath Goswami also. Not mentioned anywhere in the Shastras and the biographies. But later, Gopal Bhatta had a disciple who carried on the lineage of our Sampradaya, Srinivasacharya, and the Sad Goswami Astakam that we just sang, that was written by Srinivasacharya. And it was he, along with Narottam Das Thakur and Shamananda Prabhu, who began the preaching and book distribution of the books of the 6 Goswamis. So Srinivasacharya, he wrote this Sad Goswami Astakam, describing the glories of the 6 Goswamis. And after Gopal Bhatta Goswami disappeared, other great devotees and Vaishnavas, they wrote books describing his life. One of them was Narahari Chakravarti, who was in the line of Narottam Das Thakur. He wrote the Bhakti Ratnakara. And in the Bhakti Ratnakara, and a little bit here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have some sketches of the life of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So according to Srila Prabhupada, we have in modern days a science called archaeology. And they study the stones and the bones. And they're always finding new bone heads and structures of the body and rearranging their theories according to the new bones that they find and the stones that they find. But Prabhupada explains that our history is not based on stones and bones. Our history is based on intelligence. So we take our history from the discourses and from the books left by the great Vaishnava Acharyas. The problem is that because so little is known about Gopal Bhatta Goswami, you read one book, it has one thing, you read another book, it has another thing. And the dates are always different. Some say that he was born in 1503. Some say he was born, they say it's impossible, no, he was born in 1500. Some say he disappeared in 1575. Others say, no, that's impossible, he disappeared in 1585. So we won't worry about all the dates. We will just concentrate on the glorious activities of Gopal Bhatta Goswami throughout his lifetime. So when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the invitation of Venkata Bhatta, they would have daily discussions of Krishna Katha at his home, and people would come to hear those discussions, particularly Venkata Bhatta's family. And in particular, Gopal, little Gopal, he was so much immersed in love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he never left his side. For those 4 months, he served him continually. And he heard all of the discussions and the discourses of Krishna Katha. And being a young boy, it's assumed he was about 10, 11, 12 years old, some say 7 years old. He absorbed everything that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was discussing with his father and his uncles. So the relationship eventually between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Venkata Bhatta, here Krishnadas Kaviraj, he explains it to be in Sakyaras. They became so friendly while discussing the different beautiful pastimes of the Lord that they could even joke with each other. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, being a worshipper of Radha Krishna, he would often joke with Venkata Bhatta about his attachment to Shri Lakshmi Narayan. And in a joking matter, they would discuss Lakshmi Ji, how she performed severe austerities for thousands of years because she wanted to enter into the Rasa Leela with Sri Krishna. Although she is the most chaste wife, consort, eternal consort of Sri Narayan, she was attracted to the beautiful pastimes of Sri Krishna in Vrindavan. So, quoting many Shastric slokas from the different Puranas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was able to show, particularly from Srimad Bhagavatam, he was able to prove to Venkata Bhatta that Venkata Bhatta understood that Narayan and Krishna are the same. And if Lakshmi Ji wants to enjoy with her husband in a different dress as Krishna, then that's still chaste because it's the same person in a different dress. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he somewhat challenged that yes, she wanted to enjoy, but she was not allowed entrance into the Rasa Leela. And he explained why. And that completely convinced Venkata Bhatta about the significance of worshipping Sri Krishna in the mood of the Braja Gopis. So Gopal Bhatta, he heard all of these conversations, and he became so attached to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that at the end of the 4 months, he wanted to go with him, as did his father, Venkata Bhatta. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being a sannyasi, he was going to travel and preach, and he instructed Venkata Bhatta that you remain at and you give your son Gopal a very good education, but do not marry him. And he told Gopal Bhatta at that time, you take care of your parents throughout their life, and when their life is finished, then you proceed to Vrindavan. And there you will meet very illustrious jewel-like Vaishnavas. Their names are Rupa and Sanatan. And I want you to study under them and assist them in writing Vaishnav literature. Now this was before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had met Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. But they had already been communicating by letters. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he already had a plan to send Rupa and Sanatan to Vrindavan for writing literatures. He did not want them to initiate. Rupa and Sanatan did not accept disciples. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left to continue his tour of South India, Gopal Bhatta followed the instructions of Mahaprabhu. He stayed with his family, and the younger brother, that was Prabhuda, he took sannyas, though he had been in the Grihastha ashram. He accepted sannyas from the Shankara Sampradaya that was prominent at that time, and he became the guru of Gopal. Gopal learned all of the different branches of knowledge from his uncle, and eventually he took Diksha from him, and he also took Tridandi sannyas from his uncle, and he became Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So at the age of 30, his parents gave him permission to proceed to Vrindavan. They then left their bodies, remembering Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. when Gopal Bhatta went to Vrindavan, now he could have gone to Jagannath Puri. When he was a child, his father had brought him to Jagannath Puri, and there he manifested his love for Lord Jagannath. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed for 4 months in their home, out of separation for Sri Jagannath, he carved with his own hands deities of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, and kept them in the home of Venkata Bhatta. And if you go there to this day, their home is called the Jagannath Kutir, and you can have darshan of those hand-carved deities of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And though Venkata Bhatta, because the name Venkata is not one of the names of the Brahmins of the Rangakshetra area, he had come from a different part of South India, but his family eventually, they became the head priests of Rangakshetra. And even when Prabhupada's disciples went there, the descendants of Venkata Bhatta, who were still the head priests there, they invited the devotees to come and stay at their home, just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. So they're very open-minded and open-hearted to the ISKCON devotees there, although they're Ramanuja Sampradaya. So now Gopal Bhatta, he followed the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he proceeded by foot to Vrindavan. Now Mahaprabhu, he was wondering, because 30 years old now, that meant there was a span of 20 years that Mahaprabhu had not heard from Gopal Bhatta. He was wondering whether Gopal had yet reached Vrindavan. And just as he was wondering that, because there was no postal system in those days, you had to send physical messengers, couriers, to take your letters from place to place. So just when Mahaprabhu was wondering where was Gopal, a letter came from Rupa and Sanatan to Puri that Gopal Bhatta has now arrived in Vrindavan and he's following your instructions, and we're very happy to receive him here to assist us in our writing. So Mahaprabhu wrote back a letter to Rupa and Sanatan that you please accept Gopal Bhatta as your younger brother, and you have him assist you in your writing. And he also sent at that time gifts specifically for Gopal Bhatta, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had different particular instructions for each of the 6 Goswamis. It's through the 6 Goswamis that we can approach the Supreme Lord, as described in the Sad Goswami Astakam. Because of their meditations, because of their mercy, the fallen living entities can approach the Supreme Lord in their form of Radha and Krishna. So what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu planned was, because he had engaged Rupa and Sanatan in writing literatures, in excavating the holy places, and in establishing temples, he wanted each of the 6 Goswamis to establish temples, because the 2 lines of Bhagavad Vidhi and Pancharatrika Vidhi, they're both very important and they go together. So each of the 6 Goswamis established temples, and Gopal Bhatta would eventually establish the temple of Sri Radha Ramana Dev. The other instruction that he gave for Gopal Bhatta specifically was, he sent 3 gifts for Gopal Bhatta. He sent his kopin, a sign of renunciation. He sent his asan. Now you can see all of these things there at the Radharaman temple. Now the asan, just as we're sitting on an asan, and I'm not qualified, no one is qualified, but because we're ordered to sit here and speak, therefore we have to speak. I mean, other people are qualified, I'm not qualified. So he sent his asan. So the asan is a symbol of Guru. When you have the asan, the Vyas asan. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted 2 of the 6 Goswamis to accept disciples, to carry on the sampradaya. He wanted Raghunath Bhatta to accept disciples from Gaudadesh. And he wanted Gopal Bhatta Goswami to accept disciples from the western part of India. That is why Gopal Bhatta, he accepted some very prominent disciples, we'll hear about them, such as Srinivasacharya. And from that lineage, our sampradaya is still continuing. And then he also sent his bahirvesh, his sannyas cloth. So those things are very carefully preserved at the Radharaman temple, at the same place where Radharamanji appeared, where he had his pragat from the shalagram, at the same place where the samadhi is. These precious items given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are still there for darshan. So Gopal Bhatta, being very well trained by his uncle, Prabodhananda Saraswati, Prabodhananda Saraswati is described in Gauraganadas Dipika. He was the Gopi Tungavidya, highly intelligent, highly well versed in the Shastra, just like another Saraswati. So therefore his name became Prabodhananda Saraswati Goswami. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami, in some places it's described that he's Ananga Manjari, and in other places it's described that he's Guna Manjari in Radha Krishna Leela. So he was the assistant of Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis, and because he was from South India, and because he got such excellent education from his uncle, he was able to help them with references from the Shastras. Now he compiled many of the quotations and the procedures that we find in Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is the procedures for worshiping the Supreme Lord. And he also made rough notes that Jiva Goswami used for his preparation of the Satsandarbha. And Prabhupada explains here in the prefaces to his Satsandarbha, Jiva Goswami gives, although he wouldn't mention his name because Gopal Bhatta Goswami in his humility would not allow his name to be used, he gives reference to a South Indian Brahmin who made the rough notes out of chronological order, and now this tiny Jiva Goswami, he will put all of these notes into chronological order for the benefit of mankind. So these two very important works. He also did the Sat Kriya Dipika, which is from where we get the how to perform the Vaishnava sanskaras. Because the Smarta Brahmins, they do their sanskaras in a particular way. They worship the demigods and different forms of not the Supreme Lord, the Daivis and things like that. So the Vaishnava sanskaras, they worship the Supreme Lord with all of his names. And then he also wrote the Sanskara Dipika, the Sat Kriya Dipika, I'm probably saying the name wrong. That was specifically for the brahmacharis, grihastas, for all of the ashramas, so they would understand what their duties were and how to perform their sanskaras. But then Gopal Bhatta Goswami wrote another book, the Sanskara Dipika, and that was specifically for the Vaishnava Tridandi sannyasis, what their duties were. So he was setting down all the procedures for us Vaishnava communities that we can follow in the coming generations. So this is the foundation, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although he was coming from the Madhva Sampradaya, it was now the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So it was with the writings of the 6 Goswamis, and now particularly Gopal Bhatta Goswami, that the foundation of our activities and our procedures for worship were being established in his books. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, eventually he disappeared from our vision, and after about 8 years, Gopal Bhatta was feeling extreme separation from the Lord. He never got to see the Supreme Lord, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after his youth. He was with him in Rangakshetra. And he felt that he should also be worshipping. As Rupa Goswami was doing, he discovered the Govindadev deity. Sanatan Goswami was given the Madan Gopal deity, Madan Mohan. And each of the Lokanath Goswami, he was given the Radha Vinod deity. So he decided, and he received, because sometimes with pure devotees, they receive instructions not quite in dream. It's not a dream, but it's a inspiration given by the Supreme Lord from within, what they should do. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inspired him that he should go to Nepal for pilgrimage. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he took the arduous trip. You can imagine walking from Vrindavan across the Himalayas to the Gandaki River. Very, very far, very, very difficult trip, only by walking. And he did that, and there at the Gandaki River, he was taking bath and he was filling his water pot as a sannyasi. And as he filled up the water, because the Gandaki is the source of the Shalagram Maharaj, the curse was there between Vishnu and Vrindadevi. That Vrindadevi, when Krishna tricked her by taking the form of her husband, who was a demon, Jalandhar, and she broke her chastity, and therefore her husband was able to be killed by the demigods, she cursed Krishna. That Prabhupada, he just says very simply that there was an argument between Vrindadevi and Vishnu. So she cursed Krishna at that time, that you're so hard-hearted, you should become a stone. And Krishna counter-cursed her, that if I become a stone, then you become a plant, and I will only accept offerings if you're present there on the offering. So Shri Krishna became the self-manifested forms of Shalagram, and Vrindadevi, she appeared in the human society as Tulsi Maharani. So when he was there at Gandaki, within his water pot came of their own accord 12 shalagrams. And when he saw that they were in his water pot, he put the water out again so that the shalagrams would go back into the river. And again he filled up his pot, and again they came in. Threw the water out, third time the 12 shilas were there. So now this is when the diversion of the stories comes. He brought back those 12 shilas. Some say that he felt he was unqualified to worship the shilas. So again he went to Nepal, put them back. Again they came in, and then he brought them back. Whether he went twice or whether he went once, who can say? So the point was that he brought these 12 shilas from the Gandaki, and he used to carry them around his neck in a basket made of twigs. He would carry them wherever he went. And when he returned to Vrindavan, by that time, some of the major temples had been established of Madan Mohan and Govindaji, and the wealthy people were coming and giving donations to the different temples. So Mahaprabhu had instructed Gopal Bhatta that you should never keep any one place of residence. You should just wander and do your bhajan in the different parts of Braja. So he was doing that. He did, for a long time, he did his bhajan on the banks of the Radha Kund. And he also did his bhajan just where the Radha Raman temple is. That's right near Bansibat and Nidhiban. We have to remember there were no houses here. There were no buildings here. Vrindavan was just a massive jungle at that time until the 6 Goswamis established temples. Then after the temples were established, the Akbar, he gave land for each of the temples. so that they could grow their crops, they could have cows. And that's why still to this day, all around Vrindavan, there's Gopinath Bazaar, that was part of the Gopinath temple. There's Govinda Bagh. So these are all the different temple properties. Seva Kunj, that was a part of the Radha Damodar temple. They were all temple properties that were sold off by the pujaris in coming years, later years. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he was residing in Vrindavan area, and one of the sects came, hearing that he was a very great sannyasi, assuming that he had deities that he worshipped. He gave some very valuable ornaments and clothing for the deities. But Gopal was only worshipping Shalagram at that time. So we know that Nrsimha Chaturdasi, it's on the 14th day of the month, just before Purnima. So it was that night that he had received the gift, and he was meditating that, well, I can't use these beautiful ornaments and clothing for Shalagram. He's just around. He doesn't wear clothes. But it would be wonderful if I could worship a deity. So that night, one of his Shalagrams, the Damodar Shila, fulfilled his desire. And when he woke up the next morning on Purnima, that Damodar Shila had self-manifest, as Sri Radharaman Dev. Now, if you look up very closely to the deity, you can't see in the temple, but there are photographs. This deity, there's no way that anyone could have ever carved him. He has teeth. His mouth is slightly open. Sometimes you can see his teeth, sometimes you can't see his teeth. He has eyelids, eyelashes, not like any other deity you will ever see that has been carved. He is self-manifest. He's just small murti, like this. But he burst from the Shalagram, and as proof of it, he left part of the Shalagram on his heel, and that Shalagram is still there on his heel. So now Gopal Bhatta, he had Radharaman Dev to worship. That is Shri Krishna, who gives pleasure to Srimati Radharani. But there was no Radharani, so next to Radharamanji, they keep one silver crown of Radharani as a representation of Radharani with Radharamanji. So he established very, very high principles of deity worship, because Srila Prabhupada explains that, yes, the Bhagavad Vidhi, we are preaching according to Shastra, we are spreading the holy name, but at the same time we are also establishing temples, because Archana is also preaching. Just as we're sitting here in this temple, when Srila Prabhupada, before he built this temple, just the one tamal tree was here, he explained that if I just sit under a tree, who will come to hear me? So he decided to build a magnificent temple, because when there's a beautiful temple with beautiful deity worship, and quite frankly, our deity worship, Prabhupada instructed the devotees when they first came to learn from the Goswamis at the Radharaman temple the process of deity worship, because their deity worship has been going on since the time of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. He specifically trained his disciples. Now, when he went to Nepal, on the way to Nepal, here in UP, is a town called Saharanpur. And he stayed there in a Brahmin family. And the Brahmin's home, he had two sons, Gopinath and Damodar. So when he came back and brought the Shalagrams back, he also stayed in Saharanpur. And the son, Gopinath, came to help to worship and become the disciple of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. His name became Gopinath Pujari. So he was perfectly trained to be the Pujari of Radharamanji. But he wanted to remain a brahmachari. He wanted to spend his entire life just worshipping Radharaman. And Gopal Bhatta, once the temple was established, he knew that the lineage had to go on for the worship of the deities. And generally, in the temples, the worship is done by Grihastha families, because then from generation to generation, the worship can continue. So Gopal Bhatta asked Gopinath to marry, and Gopinath preferred to remain a brahmachari. And it was decided that his brother Damodar, he would marry, and his lineage would be the forthcoming pujaris of Radharaman. So to this day, in the Radharaman Gera, which is the entire area, it's all walled in, they're all descendants from Damodar. And all of the families that are given particular timings to do the worship of Radharaman, they're all coming from Damodar, the disciple of Gopal Bhatta. Now, they are all Gaudiya Vaishnavas, which is quite amazing for Vrindavan because there are different sampradayas here. And they all worship Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well. And they're always on friendly terms with ISKCON and Gaudiya Vaishnava factions. So even Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and of course Srila Prabhupada, they had very, very friendly and loving relationships with the Goswamis of the Radharaman temple to this day. Anytime we have programs, we invite them as well, and we're also invited to their programs. And their worship is on such high standard that the cooking, a fire was started when the worship began, and that fire to this day has been burning. It's never been put out. They're keeping that fire for the cooking going 500 years now. So this is the standard of worship, and we try to keep our standard of cleanliness and of worship as high as we possibly can, according to our capacities. And because of this archana, the beautiful archana in the temple here, and because of the Bhagavat Vidhi, the preaching from Srila Prabhupada's books, and the 24-hour kirtan that Srila Prabhupada established here, our preaching is going on very strongly. So Gopal Bhatta, after having established the Radharaman temple and initiating very illustrious disciples such as Srinivasacharya, though he was born in Bengal, he was considered by the Vaishnavas to be the incarnation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ecstatic energy, his ecstasy. So when he came, he was told to come here to Vrindavan. He was ordered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the other Vaishnavas to take Diksha from Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami ordered him, you must study under Jiva Goswami. So Jiva Goswami, he trained Srinivasacharya, Narottam Das Thakur, the disciple of Lokanath Goswami, and Shyamananda Pandit, the disciple of Hriday Chaitanya. He trained them, and then he took copies of all of the books of the 6 Goswamis, and he gave them, put them in a bullock cart, and they took those books eventually to Bengal and to Orissa. And in that way, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya has been flourishing since the time of the 6 Goswamis. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, for his assisting in the writing of the foundational books of our Sampradaya, his training of his illustrious disciples, both in Bhagavad Vidhi and in Pancharatriki Vidhi, He was of course, one of the main 6 Goswamis, though the youngest, one of the youngest. And because of his devotion to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, dedicating his whole life to the instructions given by him, our sampradaya is now very strongly going on throughout the world, and therefore we honor him on this day of his holy disappearance. If anyone has the time, they can go for kirtan to Radharamanji temple. Now, Radharamanji himself, he is the only original deity of the 6 Goswamis that is still being worshipped here in Vrindavan. He's very small. And when Aurangzeb sent his soldiers to destroy the temples here, they were able to do that. They destroyed the major temples. But because Radharaman is so small, and the temple itself, there's no shikar, there's no, externally you can't even tell that it's a temple. It just looks like a household with a lot of different people living in their homes. So they missed Radharaman, the soldiers, and they never even knew that he existed there. So he has been remaining here. He didn't have to go in a bullock cart to Jaipur and be hidden there by the Maharaj there. He's still remaining here and still being worshipped by the descendants of Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disciples, and everything is going on very beautifully there in the worship. So please go there for darshan of Radharamanji, take inspiration, and chant Hare Krishna, and remember and thank the 6 Goswamis for all their austerities, as we've heard in the Sad Goswami Astakam, giving up all of their high births. Now, the reason that Sanatana Goswami, because he had forcibly taken service in the Muslim Nawab Hussain Shah's government, he felt that he was not really qualified for the Hari Bhakti Vilas as the author. So therefore he mentions Gopal Bhatta Goswami as the author, being a South Indian from a Brahmin family. So because of his lineage, Gopal Bhatta Goswami was accepted also as a great authority in Vaishnavism, and therefore he was honored by even by the 6 Goswamis who were senior to him and who were earlier to him in initiation, because of from his birth, being raised as a pure Vaishnava. All right, thank you very much. If there are any questions, Hare Krishna.
When Radharaman first manifested, did he have the conch shell eyes? You know?
It doesn't look that way.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. You can ask the pujaris there.
Yeah, I'll do
Yes.
that. Yeah, thanks. Anyone else?
All right, no questions. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Jai.